Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, who decided what's normal? Why do women feel the pressure to act, speak, and look a certain way? Why do we feel the need to have smooth, hairless skin, perfectly painted nails, or to fit into a certain size? What's even more interesting is how these expectations differ depending on where you live, your culture, or even your age. Standards shift, but the pressure remains constant, and it's exhausting. This episode isn't about giving you all the answers. It's about asking better questions. It's about peeling back the layers of societal conditioning and exploring how these projections shape the way we see ourselves and others. If you've ever felt like you're living up to someone else's expectations rather than your own truth, this episode is for you. Please take a moment to introduce yourself down below. I really enjoy reading them, and please don't forget to subscribe as it helps the channel grow. So with no further ado, let's dive in. To understand why we feel this constant pressure to conform, we need to look at where these expectations began. They didn't just appear out of nowhere. They were shaped by history, culture, and surprisingly, philosophy. Take ancient Greece, for example. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle were obsessed with the concept of the ideal form. While this might sound abstract, it heavily influenced how people viewed beauty and perfection. Aristotle, in particular, viewed women as imperfect men. Let that sink in. This wasn't just a random thought, it was a perspective that set the stage for centuries of inequality, framing women as secondary by nature. Fast forward to the Victorian era, where women were expected to embody purity, grace, and beauty. They were treated as objects to be adorned and displayed rather than as individuals with agency. Corsets literally reshaped their bodies, and every detail of their appearance was scrutinized to fit an ideal that often caused pain and suffering. These frameworks didn't just disappear. They evolved, embedding themselves into modern culture. Let's start with an example that's often overlooked: skin tone. Why is tan skin considered desirable in some cultures and a sign of lower status in others? The answer lies in history. Western cultures today, tan skin is often associated with wealth, health, and leisure. This trend began in the early 20th century when figures like Coco Chanel made the suntans fashionable, symbolizing a life of luxury and travel. But before this shift, pale skin was prized. It was a marker of upper class, indicating that you didn't have to work outside under the sun. Now contrast this with the history of colonialism and slavery, where darker skin tones were often associated with a manual labor, oppression, and servitude. Even today, the global skin lightening industry is worth billions, thriving on these deeply ingrained biases. Meanwhile, in Western marketing, tanning salons and bronzing products are sold as symbols of vitality and freedom. What does this tell us? Beauty standards aren't universal. They're shaped by power, class, and history. Now let's talk about the body size. The idea of constitutes the ideal body has also shifted dramatically depending on the culture and era. Renaissance, during this time, full-figured bodies were celebrated, especially in the European art. Think of Peter Paul Rubens, which glorified larger women, associated them with fertility, wealth, and beauty. Being plump was a sign that you were well-fed and prosperous, the very opposing to today's obsession with thinness. Then in the Victorian era, where we mentioned earlier the corsets, which dominated this period, reshaping women's bodies to emphasize in tiny waist and exaggerated curves. The hourglass figure became the ideal, even achieving it often caused so much physical harm and pain. And then in the 20s, where we entered a more boyish, slim figure, during the roaring 20s, where societal shifted towards a thinner, more androgynous look. And then the Hollywood glamour, and look at the 50s, where curves were made in a comeback, and with the stars like Marilyn Monroe epitomizing a fuller-figured sensual ideal. And today, the modern beauty standards are a complex mix. On one hand, there's an emphasis on fitness and being toned. And on the other hand, there's the rise of plastic surgery and body augmentation, which has created an ideal that's both hyper-feminized and almost unattainable without medical intervention. This constant shifting tells us one thing. The ideal body is not real. It's a construct that reflects societal values, economics, and the power of dynamics. Philosophers like Michael Foucault helps us understand why these shifts occur. Foucault argued that societal norms are tools of control, created by those in power to maintain dominance. When the ruling class changes, so do these ideals. For example, in times of scarcity, larger bodies were celebrated because they symbolized abundance and health. And in times of prosperity, thinner bodies became desirable, representing resistance, discipline, and self-control. These changes aren't about what's inheritably beautiful. They're about reinforcing the values of the people in power at any given time. Even within the same time period, beauty standards can differ vastly across cultures. So, for example, in Japan, there's a cultural emphasis on being petite, tiny, reflecting ideals of elegance and delicacy, whereas in the US today, the rise of fitness industry has created a preference for muscular, toned, and sometimes overly cursive bodies. These examples remind us that there's no universal right way to look. It's all shaped by culture, economics, and history. So why do these beauty standards stick around even when they seem so arbitrary? The answer is simple: control and profit. Industries thrive on our insecurities. The global beauty market, diet industry, and fitness culture all profit by convincing us that we are not enough as we are. They're mastering the art of creating problems that don't exist and then selling us the solution. But here's the truth. These standards only have power because we give it to them. The moment we start questioning their origins and rejecting what doesn't serve us, we take that power back. Think about the beauty standards you've internalized. Where do they come from? Do they align with your values, or are they rooted in expectations you never questioned? Remember, what's normal is a construct. It's not real. And once you see that, you begin to redefine what beauty and success means for you. Throughout history, societal standards, especially those targeting women, have been used as a form of control. When women are consumed with perfecting their appearance, they have less time, energy, and confidence to question the systems that oppress them. Think about it. If you're constantly worried about whether your body is the right size, your skin is the right tone, or even your skin is on trend, how much mental energy does that leave for pursuing your goals or challenging societal norms? Philosopher Michael Foucault called this biopower, the way societies regulate bodies to maintain control. By defining what's acceptable and desirable, those in power create invisible rules that we internalize, often without even realizing it. And the most insidious part? We start to reproduce these ideas, enforcing these standards within our own communities. Take, for example, the way women sometimes judge another for their choices. Why doesn't she dress her age? Why doesn't she put more effort into her appearance? She's too skinny. She let herself go. This internalized judgment keeps us trapped in the very system we wish to escape. Now let's talk about profit. Entire industries are built on making us feel inadequate and then selling us solutions to problems they invented. The beauty industry, for example, thrives on the message that we're not enough as we are. It tells us your skin isn't clear enough, buy the serum. Your lashes are not long enough, try this mascara. Your body isn't toned enough, join this gym. Similarly, the diet industry has perfected the art of profiting from these insecurities. It sells us the promise of transformation. Lose 10 pounds and your life will magically improve. Yet these programs are often designed to fail, keeping us trapped in a cycle of shame and spending. Even the fashion industry plays its part, constantly shifting trends to ensure that your own today feels outdated tomorrow. This creates a perpetual need to consume. And let's not forget social media. We're curated these images and filtered perfection feed for our insecurities 24/7. Influencers and celebrities often promote unattainable beauty standards under the umbrella of inspiring living, fueling comparison and self-doubt. But here's the thing, the cost of confronting to these standards isn't just financial, it's emotional, mental, and even physical. Emotionally, constantly striving to meet impossible standards erodes self-worth. Mentally, the pressure to look and act a certain way creates stress and anxiety. And physically, whether it's extreme dieting, cosmetic procedures, or even exercising, the toll on our bodies can be significant. And yet, many of us continue to play along. Why? Because we're told that if we just work a little harder, buy the right products, or achieve the perfect look, we'll finally be happy, accepted, and worth it. Here's the truth no one tells you. These standards only have power because we give it to them. They thrive in our compliance. The moment we start questioning their origins and rejecting what doesn't serve us, we begin to take the power back. We start to see beauty standards for what they really are. Constructs designed to control us, not truths we have to live by. I want you to take a moment to think about the beauty standards you've internalized. Where do they come from? Were they passed down from your family, reinforced by media, or rooted in cultural norms? Do they align with your values? Or are they expectations you never questioned, simply inherited from the world around you? Now ask yourself, what would it look like to reject these standards, to stop striving for someone else's version of perfection, and create your own definition of beauty, success, and normalcy? Let's talk about practical steps for reclaiming your power. Awareness is the first step. Start paying attention to where these standards show up in your life. For example, do you feel pressure to wear makeup every day, even when you don't want to? Are you avoiding certain activities because of how you think you look? Then challenge the narrative. When you catch yourself thinking, I need to fix this part of myself, ask why. Is this thought rooted in your own desire, or is it a reflection of societal pressure? Then rewire the script. Instead of saying, I'll be beautiful when, try I am enough exactly as I am. One thing I find very helpful is limiting exposure to harmful media. Curate your social media feed to include diverse, authentic representations of beauty. Unfollow accounts that make you feel less than or that promote unattainable ideals. Build a supportive community. Surround yourself with people who celebrate authenticity and diversity. Share your own journey with them and encourage them and yourself to reject harmful norms. And always practice self-compassion. Remember, unlearning societal conditioning takes time. Be patient with yourself as you navigate this process. I think we've all seen it, whether it's in real life or social media, or even within ourselves. The need to appear as though we have it all together. The curated version of motherhood, fertility, work, and life that seems effortless, flawless, and almost untouchable. But let's be honest, underneath that perfect exterior is often struggle, exhaustion, doubt. And as a woman, many of us feel this constant pressure to present a version of ourselves that is always in control, always thriving, and always enough. For me, it was never more apparent than in the motherhood, where I saw how our journeys tried to look so perfect. And this illusion of perfection doesn't just begin when we become mothers. It starts long before, in our fertility journeys. Whether it's trying to conceive, staying pregnant, or experiencing the heartbreak of loss. These are some of the most vulnerable and complex of a woman's life. Yet they're often hidden away, shrouded in silence and shame. How often do you hear a woman say, "We're trying and it's going great," when in reality they've been struggling for months or years? Or the pregnancy is fine when they're silently grappling with anxiety and health complications. I'm loving being a mom when they're drowning in sleepless nights, postpartum recovery, and the overwhelming responsibility of raising another human being. These are real experiences, messy, beautiful, and hard. Yet we rarely hear women speak openly about them. Why? Because we've been conditioned to believe that admitting struggle is a sign of weakness, that if we're not thriving, we're failing. I've felt this pressure myself, especially as a mother. There have been moments when I've been surrounded by women who seem to have it all together. They talk about their fertility journeys, their postpartum experiences, and their work-life balance, all with this polished ease that makes me wonder, am I the only one struggling? But then I started to realize something. The perfection they were projecting wasn't necessarily their truth. It was their armor. It was their way of shielding themselves from judgment, from vulnerability, from the fear of being seen as less than. And I recognized it because I've done it too. For a long time, I felt the need to present a version of myself that had it all figured out. I didn't want to admit when I was overwhelmed or when things felt impossible. But what I've come to understand is that this illusion does not serve us. It isolates us. It keeps us from the connection and support we need to navigate these experiences. This pressure to be perfect is deeply rooted in generational cycles. From centuries, women were conditioned to serve, whether it was as mothers, wives, or caretakers. Our worth was often tied to how well we could fulfill these roles. And with that came the expectation to do it flawlessly. Our mothers and grandmothers often modeled this behavior. They didn't show us the struggles because they were taught to keep it hidden. They didn't talk about their pain because they were taught to endure it silently. Now we perpetuate it ourselves. We don't just feel the need to meet these standards. We feel the need to exceed them, to prove that we can do it all and make it all look effortless. And this isn't just about external expectations. It's internal too. Somewhere along the way, we internalize the belief that our values lie in the how well we perform, how much we achieve, and how perfectly we can present ourselves in the world. The other day, my daughter asked me a question that stopped me in my tracks. She said, "Why are there disabled children?" It was such an innocent question, but it opened the door for me to talk about something so rarely discussed, the complexity of life, of fertility, of these things we don't always have control over. I explained to her in the simplest terms that not all eggs are the best quality, and sometimes things happen to us we can't control. In that moment, I saw an opportunity to give her a glimpse into the struggles that so often are kept in the shadows. I wondered if I should take it further, if I should talk to her even in a small way about infertility, about loss, about the challenges so many women face but rarely speak of. Because here's the truth, if we don't start having these conversations, we'll continue the cycle of silence, and silence breeds shame. And here's what I've learned. We can't break free from the illusion of perfection until we start getting real about ourselves and each other. It starts with vulnerability. It continues with empathy, and it grows with courage. When we admit that things are hard, we create space for others to do the same. When we stop judging others for their struggles and their choices, we create a culture of support rather than competition. When we choose to show up authentically, even when it feels uncomfortable, we pave the way for future generations to do the same. I want my daughters to grow up in a world where they don't feel the need to hide their struggles or pretend they have it all figured out. I want them to know that it's okay to not be okay, that their worth isn't tied to their ability to meet impossible standards. So I want to invite you to reflect on this. Where in your life do you feel the need to project perfection? What would it feel like to let that go? To show up as you are? You can start breaking the cycles of silence and shame, not just for yourself, but for the women and the girls around you. These questions aren't easy, but they're necessary, because the truth is, the more we embrace our imperfection, the more we free ourselves and each other. Strength isn't about having it all figured out. It's about being honest, being real, and being willing to admit when things are hard. Let's redefine what it means to be strong. Let's create a culture where vulnerability is celebrated, where struggles are shared, and where perfection is no longer the goal. Thank you so much for being here with me today. If this message resonates, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And let's continue breaking this cycle one conversation at a time. To help you stay inspired, I've created a free affirmation deck for your phone background with powerful affirmations to guide you all year long. Visit alchemiasoaps.com and use code EmpowHERed to download it free. Let's step into the new year with grace, purpose, and a deep sense of alignment. Subscribe, share, and leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. And always remember to take care of you. See you soon.